welcome to your activity one. I wanted to create this video for you to go through the steps and answer any questions that you might have about your first HR and Me activity. So this activity, hopefully you've clicked on the folder on Cougar Courses, you've opened it up, maybe you've taken a look at the steps. And so this is step one. Congratulations, you can check off step one once you're done watching this video. But I wanted to let you know that this activity really is more like a module. You can think of it as like an asynchronous module with multiple activities nested within it. So I want to remind you that it will take some time, and I also want to point out that this is what we would be doing, or at least a version of this, in class for the entire Saturday. So I don't want you to be alarmed that it may take you several hours, and even over the course of a few days once you take a look and we walk through the steps. So that is how it is intended to be. All right, so let's take a look at what we'll be doing for our first module one. The theme is about HR myth busting. So you may have gotten the sense from some of the articles that you read for this first class session, or for your first class for session one, that HR myths abound. There are all kinds of myths about different aspects of HR. So that's what you're going to be doing for this first module. You're going to be exploring those myths and trying to bust those myths in various ways. So let me take you through the steps. So step one, like I said, check. Step two is I want you to make a list, a short list of 5 to 10 things that you think might be potential individual myths. So this doesn't need to be long, in bullet form. Just, list the myths that maybe you can think about what you might think about HR or from what you've read. And then step three is to watch this short video, and it's asking some HR professionals that are working in the field, what do they think people have misconceptions about in terms of HR? So then you can go back once you watch that video from step three and add to your list. Feel free to add or delete from that original list that you made in step two, and you will be continuing to refer to that list in step two, so make sure you have a nice list. Step four, I want you to actually take it a step further. I want you to conduct your own mini study, and this is the part that you can kick off today, but it's going to take a few days because you need responses. So let me give you the gist of it and then we'll talk through it. So essentially what I want you to do is reach out to 5 people that you know. These can be anyone. This can be friends, family, people that relatives, colleagues that you used to work with that you haven't seen for a while. You can use it as a good way if you just recently met someone and you're looking for a way to kind of follow up with them. This might be a way to reconnect. But essentially what I want you to do is reach out to 5 people. Now you're really actually aiming to get responses from 5 people, so it might be a good idea to reach out to more if you have access to more people, and that might be something to think about. Also, the more people you reach out to, the quicker you'll probably get to start working on this because you'll start getting responses in. So reach out to people. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to send them an email saying that as part of your MBA class, you are conducting a survey about HR. Now make sure not to bias them, right? Because if you say you're interested in misconceptions, then they're going to be really careful about what they say. And you're going to ask them a few questions. So the questions that I have for you, what do people who work in HR at your company do, right? You just want to get a general sense of what do they think people in HR do. Make sure also that you don't contact people who are in HR. right? You're aiming for people who work in finance, people who work in marketing, basically any other capacity of business than HR. Now, they also don't need to be people who work for a big company that has an HR department. This could be someone who owns their own business, right? That might be interesting to just collect information about anyone who works in any capacity, really, and get their impressions of HR. So I would aim for people who you think will respond to you and respond rather in a timely manner. So you could ask them these 3 questions. You could just copy paste this into an email that you create. You could also add a few questions of your own, or you could delete. Now, it's also important that we don't need the names and places that these people work. So you can, if it makes them feel better, you can let them know that you will change their name. That's totally fine, or not even report their name when you give this list. So, and then I want you to also know that, likely you'll have some people who won't respond. So I just want you to give this a try. I know that, it's not meant to be intimidating, but collecting data is really what researchers do. So, I want you to get a little experience doing this, and you might be surprised at what you might find. So, moving on, step 5 is to do just a very informal qualitative analysis. So, read the responses carefully and start extracting statements. So, pieces within whatever they said that you think might be evidence of misperceptions that they might have about HR. So, extract those and compile a list of kind of those snippets within your responses that you think might support the idea that they have misperceptions. Then for step 5, you're going to provide a few sentences answering the questions that I laid out for you. What are your impressions of these data? So you probably want to go back and do step 5 once you've collected a few responses. And I'm just going to leave it at a few because I think you could potentially do this activity with, if you only get 3 responses, the more the better. But I don't want you to fixate on that number of 5. So I don't want you to be alarmed if it just doesn't work out for you. And I want you, even if your first impression is, gosh, I don't know anyone that I can reach out to, I want you to sit with that for a minute. I think that, with the general nature of this, the purpose of this data collection, there probably are a lot more people that you could reach out to with just a short email like this. So, you can start brainstorming that right away today. And I would probably recommend crafting your email and trying to get that email sent out. Okay, so that moving on to step 6. So step 6 is really kind of starting to try to figure out why. Now you have this idea that there probably are some real pervasive myths about HR out there. We've heard from multiple sources, including some of your own, that these myths probably do exist. So step 6 is really trying to look at why might these myths exist? Why might these misperceptions about what HR is and the value and even stereotypes about the people who work in HR, how are they created? So that's where this video from Dr. Budd, who's a professor at the University of Minnesota, he goes through a brief origin story, really, an evolution of the field of HR. So what I want you to try to do is think about how that history might have led to some of these myths. And you might not be able to connect all of them. That's why I say feel free to supplement with your own research. But you can also, it's really, I just want your ideas. If one of the myths that you're thinking about is that, everyone in HR as a people person is really nice, give me your own ideas, a few sentences of your own ideas about why you think that might have been a rumor that has been circulating. Where did that myth possibly start, or how did it get started? So that's really kind of what I want, a few sentences of your own ideas about why. And again, you're going to refer back to your list of misperceptions from step 2 and give me the why, a few sentences about why for each. And that of course is step 7. So that's step 6 is watching the video. Step 7 is the why about each of the myths. That brings us to step 8. So for step 8, I really want you to think about what's the problem with these misperceptions. You know, what impact does this misinformation have on various stakeholders? So now we're talking about employees in and outside of HR. So what's the impact on someone who works in HR that these misperceptions exist, right? How does that impact whether or not they're able to get their work done? What about if, you know, upper management has these misperceptions about HR somehow? You know, how does that impact the business? Do you think it's positive for the organization that, you know, these misperceptions exist? So I want you to think through that a little bit and, you know, write a paragraph explaining your ideas about that. You don't have to go through all the stakeholders, but just think of the ones that you think might be most impacted. And then the second component of that, kind of the part B of step 8, is to think about your own company. If you work for, you know, your own startup, or you know, an example, maybe your company doesn't have an HR department. You know, you can think back through your past when you worked in a company that had an HR. You know, you can also use a different company. So don't get bogged down by that. If when I say, you know, think about an example, it doesn't directly apply to your current situation, you can get creative with that. So feel free to kind of augment this for, you know, what makes sense in your life, in your situation. Okay, that brings us to step 9. So Tim Horgan is the executive vice president for the Home Depot, and he gave a great interview here. And I think you can use his words and his message to help myth bust. He goes through a lot of, not explicitly talking about the myths, but just listening to the way he talks about his job and what he does. I think you can start to see that some of these ideas that people have about HR are just not founded in what a real HR executive does. So that's really what I want you to use this particular interview to do, is myth bust. So going back again to your list in step 2, I want you to write, you know, what the truth really is about each of those myths. What's the real deal for each kind of one of those misperceptions. And then for step 10, just a few kind of general questions reflecting on the activities that you worked through. So that is what I want you to do. Again, I know that this is not, you know, an insignificant amount of work, but I want you to remember that how many hours we would be in class, right? And that this is flexible. You can work this around your life, your, you know, when it makes sense for you. So I think there's a real benefit of that. I would definitely start working on this today. Obviously, you can't finish unless you get people who respond extremely quickly, but start the process today. And reach out to me if you have any questions. So I'm here to help you. I don't want you to get fixated on the number of responses or, you know, worry about that, but I do want you to get some data from other people outside of your circle. So I hope that helps. I want you to feel free to explore and make this activity or module your own. And remember, it's not due until the very end of the class. So, you know, do as much as you can today, and then wait for those responses to come in, and you can put the finishing touches on when you start getting some nibbles. All right, I hope this video helped. And like I said, don't hesitate to reach out to me.